Hello, everybody. I know I haven't done one of these in a while. One of these podcasts from a secret location in the Bronx, but I'll do one now. I owe you big time. And this one is labeled SARS Remix is the new HIV. But I'm going to say COVID in the video just because a lot of people use different names like the vacation or BUG19, stupid 19, things like that, because they don't want their YouTube channels erased. Well, I don't really care if my YouTube channel is erased. I'd rather it not be, but it's not a big deal for me because I have the Odyssey and the BitChute channels, which are channels where I get more traffic. So I'm just going to say it like it is, but that's a weird thing to say, and let me tell you where I got that idea from, and I think I have a case. I believe I have an actual case with SARS Remix COVID being the new HIV boogeyman thing to make you afraid of. What put me onto it was this recent book by RFK Jr., Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci. And if you'll notice, the book is called The Real Anthony Fauci. It's not called Secrets Behind COVID or The Origins of COVID or the mysterious conspiracy involved in the proliferation and creation of COVID. That's not the title. The title is The Real Anthony Fauci. And one of the fascinating things about this book is it has 200 pages on HIV/AIDS, which is pretty incredible in this novel coronavirus era. And in those 200 pages, he talks about much of the information in more detail, but the information from the documentary called House of Numbers. And in that, what he talks about, both in the Brett Leung's documentary, but in great detail with links to footnotes to the studies and the papers and the interviews and whatnot from the science community. What he points to is the fact that HIV to AIDS is really something of a myth. Now, that may sound fantastical to you, but what RFK has done is pointed out things like the Robert Gallo study on 76 people that, in theory, showed that HIV morphs into AIDS. Of those 76 people, only 26 people of them had any traces of what we call HIV in their system. Now, that's a weird bit of so-called evidence to show that HIV, the virus, becomes AIDS. Then you have Peter Duesberg, who they tried to, in one of the earliest examples of canceling, they tried to have him fired and destroyed from Cal Berkeley because he said that AIDS is not HIV. What he said is HIV is nothing to worry about, and that the drug AZT is the real danger, and you need to never take AZT as it's toxic and it kills you. And other things as well. I mean, you're talking about a guy who is the National Academy of Science honor position at age 50. Duesberg's pedigree is impeccable. So what Fauci did basically was make it so that Peter Duesberg could never get any funding for research, which he did. They in effect canceled Duesberg by pulling access to any kind of public funds. Duesberg is still alive. He'll still talk. And he has a huge book. So, and then there's Kary Mullis, the creator of the PCR technology and a Nobel Prize winner. And Mullis talks about how he went looking for a paper because he was commissioned to write a paper on HIV to AIDS, and he started the paper off with HIV is the probable cause of AIDS. And he said to his colleagues, I need a footnote. I need to, put a little number 1 and link to the paper, the study that shows that HIV is the probable cause of AIDS. It's exactly how he says it. And what happened was that paper, that study, that proof doesn't exist. Now, Mullis died conveniently in the late summer of 2019. And he would challenge anyone and everyone to talk with about this. And of course, no takers. They labeled him a weirdo and an AIDS denialist, right? This is what they do. Because they know Bubus Americanus will fall for it. Duesberg as well. And then, so they do all of this, and Kennedy points it out in his book, 200 pages. And in addition, Luc Montagnier in 1990 says HIV is probably just a harmless virus, passenger virus, doesn't really do anything. And Montagnier is the Nobel Prize winner for the discoverer of the HIV virus. All of this, footnoted, talked about in length, discussed in RFK Jr.'s book. Now here's what got me thinking along these lines. The Associated Press came out with a 4,000-word hit piece on this topic, and impugning and maligning, of course, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Here's the weird part, and Ron Unz pointed this out, and I obviously Unz and I think alike because I'm always looking at the reaction. So the reaction to RFK's book, which took, I think, 2 weeks to formulate, and 4 to 6 people got together and wrote the hit piece by the Associated Press on RFK Jr. And nowhere to be found in the reaction to RFK's book is mention of the 200 pages on what amounts to a medical hoax, a now moving on 40-year-long bit of medical hoaxery. That HIV causes AIDS, that HIV is even dangerous in the first place, that AIDS is even one virus, one disease. They don't talk about it. They don't call RFK Jr. an AIDS denialist. They don't mention it. In the weeks it took, and the multiple people, I want to say 6 people, let's say it's 4, from the Associated Press article, they don't mention it. Now, isn't that a little strange? You'd think they would slap AIDS denialist on that hit piece 6 Ways to Sunday. Bubus Americanus demands it, but they don't. So you'll have to remember, if you have an attention span longer than 2 weeks, which I do, that HIV to AIDS was the big scare disease starting in the early to mid-1980s. I know because I was in grade school. I was at PS 84 and then JHS 167. And then as a Brooklyn Tech graduate, we got the speech on HIV to AIDS. Be careful when you get busy, right? Don't want to get AIDS, birth protection, all this kind of stuff. And it was trumped up as the thing that will kill you. Be afraid. And I think that's worn off. I think people aren't scared anymore. And if you'll remember how these people operate, fear is the thing that they use with the greatest efficacy. Their ability to stoke fear is second to none. And they use it really, really well because people are easily made afraid. And so the tribalism within us, fear it's like, it gives it fuel. And for decades, going on 4 decades now, the HIV thing has been used to create fear. And it's really, it's worn out. I mean, do they talk about it much? I mentioned to adults in my world, are you scared of AIDS? Oh, well, AIDS will kill you. Really? Then what about Magic Johnson? And all these other people that are just living HIV positive, right? And I started thinking, and there's medicine for it now. I mean, they've cured AIDS. I didn't read that in the paper anywhere. Oh no, but now they can control it. I haven't read that anywhere. Where have they announced? Wouldn't that be on the front page and the lead story of every news organization in the world? Hey, we can now control AIDS. Don't worry about it. But it's not. So the fear has wound down. And so the new HIV positive is going to be COVID positive. Test positive for COVID. Watch out for COVID. You're going to get COVID. And just like somebody who was in the prime of health, someone like Magic Johnson, he's just the easiest one to show. He's fine. COVID positive. 99.997 people under the age of 70, they're fine. Oh, but they push out positive numbers, test positive. So the fear thing, the fear machine, is not using HIV positive anymore. It's COVID positive. And this is going to be the new one, in my opinion. And two things quickly before we're done. I don't think, because this is, the Bubus americanus is really a detestable creature. It's the worst of human species. Oh, are you saying that people got together in a dark room and rubbing their hands together? What are we going to use to make fear again, right? What's the fear recipe this time? I don't know if that happened. Maybe. It could. Only a fool would think that organized power wouldn't get together and warp society for their own ends, which are usually more power and more money. What kind of clownish clod thinks that doesn't happen? Apparently millions of people. But anyway, so I don't know if they got together in a dark room with bags of money and lights dark and said, what's the new fear tactic? Maybe, but it works now. And whatever the MO is, whatever the underlying reason, I don't know. I'm not connected at that level. But the fear thing is going to work, right? So I don't know if they got together and did it, but I think they're going to use it the way I see it, right? HIV positive, well, that's now going to flip and be the new scared COVID positive. So we've got that going on. And the other thing is that you see all the same patterns that RFK points out with HIV to AIDS with the COVID stuff. It's the exact same playbook. Where the real virus, and I told you this months ago, in the summer of 2020, I said, well, I didn't say it. I'm echoing Owen Benjamin, who got there first because he's better at this than I am. Fear is the virus. And Benjamin was right. He was right then in the late summer of 2020, maybe even before then. And he's right now. And I'm telling you, I think he's right. I'm saying the same thing, right? The virus that they use is fear. Fear is the virus. So that's really my main message, right? You don't need to be afraid. I think I had COVID in September of 2021. I think my mother had it. There are people at work who've had it. They're all alive and thriving. Some are vaccinated and some aren't. And the key is to not be afraid. So one of the ways to do that is to not bite on the fake every time, right? Like you see, like the Optimus Prime variant, it didn't hit hard, right? It was kind of a flop. As a product launch, it failed. I mean, it got a couple of people all riled up, but not, And now you see the narrative changing with lockdowns. Lockdowns are bad, all this kind of stuff. So that's a whole nother podcast. But the point is, the patterns in the 80s are now the same patterns in the 2020s, right? You have this 40 years difference, and the playbook is the same playbook. And the fact that RFK has connected Fauci to both is pretty brave, and he has a case, and I recommend you take a look at it. So that's it for now. We'll talk again soon, and I'll see you on the blog site or in person or wherever it is you get your alternative media. Take care. Have a good one.